Hello, welcome. This is session one of the HyFlex Learning Community's HyFlex Course Design Workshop. And what I'm going to do is basically talk through the presentation materials that are posted to the Learning Management System site. And so what I'm going to do is share that with you and explain the main ideas there. I won't go into all of the details that you'll find in the presentation and or in the resources that are also posted to the workshop site. So those are left for you to explore on your own and to ask questions about. The discussion forum we have at the end of each session module is a great place to ask questions or to make comments about the materials that you're finding. And so this first session is really talking about developing your HyFlex strategy. It's really critical to have an idea of why you're going to do this, if you are going to do this, and what are some of the deciding factors that'll help you make that decision. Even if you've already made this decision, it's good to confirm that decision and to think about some of these other factors that might be involved in this. And so that's really what session one is asking you to do, is explore those ideas and to confirm or maybe set the strategic direction that you want to take for this. And so I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly, and we'll see how that goes. So my agenda really for talking through this is, why does strategy matter? What are the benefits? What are the costs? And how do we implement this when we're thinking about doing this? My assumption, of course, is that you are either planning to teach a HyFlex course yourself, or perhaps you're helping others develop their own HyFlex courses, or maybe you're going to be doing HyFlex, the hybrid flexible approach, in a workshop or some other kind of learning event or activity that's not necessarily a formal course. But the assumption, of course, is that you are going to do this. And so what I'm expecting you to do is to try these ideas out so that you get a sense of how well they might work for you in your environment. So think about a course context. What I'll do briefly in each of these videos is talk, a little bit about why are we doing HyFlex again, just to remember this why is important. And before we even get to why, making sure that we talk about what this is that we're actually talking about. We're talking about creating a single course that has face-to-face on the ground, on campus, in-person instruction as well as online instruction. The online instruction could be face-to-face, face-to-face like Zoom online. It could also be asynchronous online. It might be one or the other in your situation. It doesn't necessarily have to be both online modes to qualify, in my mind at least, to be called HyFlex. So when we talk about HyFlex, also, there are a lot of different names for HyFlex at your institution. You may already have a different name for this, and that's fine. HyFlex is not a trademark term. I try to emphasize the definition I've been having for 20 years or so, almost 20 years, not quite. But there are other places have used other names for this. This is just an example of the ones that were available before the pandemic, 2019, when we created the hybrid flexible course design book. All these terms above the line, the middle of the screen here, were already in use in the literature. All of them came after HyFlex, and some of them actually refer to HyFlex and when they talk about why they did what they did, and then they named it something differently because they needed to brand it differently at their own institution. Below the line are some other flexible multimodal, well, maybe not flexible, multimodal approaches also before the pandemic, 2019 or earlier, but they didn't really talk about flexibility. So I kind of segregated them a little bit. Since the pandemic, there have probably been at least 2 or 3 dozen other terms being used, all for very similar things. And so you might call it something different. I also want to mention that the HyFlex Learning Community does continue to provide resources like a bibliography, webinars, newsletters, etc., to help those in our community who are trying to do this. And so please try to stay connected with us through that. So when we talk about strategy, first of all, I think we need to think a little bit about our needs and opportunities. What are the needs? What are the opportunities? And these are going to be there's some general needs we have in education, higher education, K-12 education, pretty much every level, almost every kind of school environment, online, even face-to-face, of course. We find that there's a need for some blending, some flexible options for students. But also, what are those opportunities for you specifically? Because none of this applies to me or it applies to others is specifically custom fit for your situation. Your challenge is to figure out, well, what exactly does this look like in my institution, maybe my college, my department? in my classes with my students or in my workshops and in my maybe it's a staff support unit of some sort. So that's what we're going to try to help you do. When we talk about HyFlex learning, institutions tend to value lots of different things. Just a couple of them. You could potentially enroll more students if you can increase access to your programs. If you provide online options and online opportunities for a traditional face-to-face program, you will be able to serve students in different markets, location-wise, time-wise. Maybe even ones who are looking for an online program might find your face-to-face program and realize that they can be part of that way, and vice versa. Other things, you can support really busy students. Who's not busy these days? But the fact that students can control their own schedule more is a real important thing. And I think a lot of institutions value this because they realize that their students need this flexibility and are asking for this flexibility. And the more we can do to help students, help them fit our curriculum and their experience in our programs into their lives and vice versa. So there's a, kind of like a compromising situation here for them, that could certainly be better for them. And if it's better for them, then in the long term, hopefully it'll be better for us as well. We can also use this to help our faculty learn how to teach well online. If they're not teaching just an online course and they're teaching face-to-face and online in ways, especially as they grow into this, that allow them to develop those online teaching skills, online course design skills, while they're continuing to provide the high-quality face-to-face experience, that can also be something that's a strategic value for us as an institution. So there are lots of different things. This is just a list that we've looked at over the years. You might have other ones. The literature is full of different reasons to do this. Most of them are around student flexibility, accessing students in different markets, providing opportunities for smaller programs to have a greater reach with their own students, and quite honestly, those who've looked at it more deeply have seen that actually they're finding that they can get deeper learning with students, more learning with students, even if the students are traditionally face-to-face students, but they have all these online access resources, online resources to use to help them learn. Online students often, my students have reported to me, and this is one of their benefits, is that even though they never came into the classroom, they were glad to know there was a classroom environment that existed they could draw upon if they needed to. So they found that backup was really helpful for them, even if they never took advantage of it. So there's something going on in the way they feel about the class and their perspective on the class that tends to be a positive thing to support their learning. Of course, the students really find a lot of benefits in the flexibility. They can choose when to be here and when to be online. And if you have different modes available online, they can choose to be asynchronously online or asynchronously online. Once again, I find that students tend to prefer one mode over another. And even when they can't be in that preferred mode, they know that the other mode is available. And so when they can, they jump back to the mode that they actually prefer to be in. So that's helpful for them. So what do faculty value? Well, one of the things that faculty value is that now there's really no path for students to be absent. If a student can't be there for a face-to-face meeting, and they normally are, well, now they can do it online, and students typically will have the skills and the technology to do that, or they can get them from the institution, or we can help them learn how to do that, right? Faculty also tend to value over time the fact that they build richer courses now because they have all of the online capabilities. They build an online course, and then they use that online course to teach students in all the different modes. They have more resources available to support student learning. And so students might have 2 or 3 different ways of accessing content rather than just the one way they had before. You come into class, maybe they do some reading ahead of time, they come into class, they hear an interactive lecture, and that's about it. Well, now they'll have at least a recording now, probably, but they also might have some sort of an online activity that's designed around the content, so some content interactivity they might not have had in the class before. So you can actually get to deeper learning, and some faculty find that to be a real valuable thing. As a matter of fact, many of us who've been teaching this way for years would probably never choose to go back to a single mode of instruction just because we find that not only does it provide access to students, but it's actually enjoyable to teach this way because you know that you are supporting their learning in different ways with different opportunities to access information, to interact with information and with their colleagues, their peers. And so we do actually get an opportunity to support their learning really better. And we can do this in different modes, and including the mode that we prefer. I think most of us probably do have a preferred mode of teaching as well. The other thing that I found particularly valuable, and this is the last one I'll talk about here, you can look at the rest of these, of course, is that I find I'm more engaged with my students now throughout a week as opposed to just touching base with them during the scheduled class periods once a week or maybe twice a week. Now I'm online with them at least every other day during the work week, and I schedule time in my calendar so that I'm there primarily in the forums, but also interacting through messaging and things like that with students. I limit the time because I don't have, I only have the same amount of time in my working budget that I did before. But I find that I'm more active in interacting with them. I don't forget about them for 5 or 6 days, and oh, I got class tomorrow. Okay, what are they doing? Or what have they been saying? Things like that. And so that's helped me really to stay engaged with students between class sessions. And I think that if we want to engage students, we have to have engaged faculty first. And so this is one of the things that helps me be more engaged when I'm teaching in modes like this. Now, when we had the COVID situation that we all lived through, if you were in the education system, you know exactly what that was like. We had to take care of a couple of things. Two important things were physical distancing and instructional continuity. So one of the strategic advantages we had with HyFlex is that we already had the ability to continue teaching even when we lost the classrooms. We did not have to have a 2 or 3 week shutdown to all of a sudden stand up a Zoom class or to put some things together in the LMS to do an asynchronous version of a class that was face-to-face. We already had it built. And so all we had to do essentially was tell students, look, there's no classroom available for us to meet with for the next couple of weeks, is what we thought at the time, remember? But we'll just do it online. And over time, well, actually, a lot of our students, were fine with that. I mean, COVID was a problem for us all, of course, and it was probably much more of a problem than we really appreciated at the time. But we didn't have to worry about creating more content for students, creating more interactivity, creating assessments for students. It was already done. And so we could just continue as much as possible. And that was actually a stabilizing influence, I think, in our lives, at least for a very small part of it, while we were going through this kind of social upheaval. The other thing about this was physical distancing. When we were able to bring students back into the classroom, we already had a built-in way to accommodate half the students in person and half the students online. We didn't have to do an A/B kind of pattern at all. We're used to having about half of our students in person and the other half online. So we could still allow students who wanted to be online all the time, and students who wanted to be in the classroom to come into the classroom as long as we didn't exceed capacity. And that was probably 50% of the space. So we found that we were able to fit this very well. So that was a special experience. Hopefully we never have to live through that again. But it's an example of some of the things you can get strategically when you create a more flexible environment so you can be more agile and adaptable to the situation as it changes around you. So the real important question, of course, in this module, in this workshop, of course, is what about your specific needs and opportunities? What are they? Are you trying to reach new populations of students, teach more students in the same spaces, or maybe you want to take a class that's a particular size and you don't you need that space for something else that can't be done flexibly or can't be done in multiple modes. And now you want to use your smaller classrooms for your HyFlex courses. We find that our campuses are able to do that now because we have very predictable participation patterns that develop over time. So over time, we can predict pretty well how many students are likely to be in person for a particular HyFlex course. Do we want to better serve students who have this need for online access so we can improve the online experience for them because there's a face-to-face component that also feeds into the online experience and invites them essentially even into a face-to-face experience, even if you wouldn't expect them to be here. I've had students come in from hundreds of miles away. They maybe came in for business, or maybe they just wanted to meet their colleagues face-to-face. They would come to visit the class. This was only available because we had a face-to-face path through the class. If it was a fully online class, there would have been none of that available for them. And of course, if we have to revert to fully online for some reason, it could be a health related, it could be weather related, it could be public transit strike related, or whatever it might be. If we lose the capability to be in the classroom with our students, we still have that built-in opportunity to be fully online without having to, create a whole bunch of new designs. We already have it there. It's ready to go. And as a matter of fact, it's not only ready to go, we are using it while we're also teaching in the classroom. So another part of the strategy, of course, is thinking, well, what are the costs of doing this? You don't get something for nothing, probably almost anywhere, especially when you're talking about creating a different course design. It's going to cost you something to do this. You're here getting professional development, right? That's already a cost in your time, if nothing else, right? But it's important for us to think about that. When we're talking about what we're trying to do, one of the things we're doing is we're planning for resilience. And there's this idea of dynamic stability, which allows us to kind of be able to change and adapt, to flex, if you will, as while we're going along in the same direction. So we're not saying we're not changing the curriculum. We're not changing the learning outcomes in almost every case. We're continuing to basically meet our pattern of content delivery and participation and assessment and all of that stuff. We're just now doing it more flexibly so we can adapt to the situation, and we can really, probably most importantly, help students adapt to their changing day-to-day needs as a student in our classes. So some of the things that the administration of an institution would probably be looking at is, well, should we do this or not? If we are going to do this, what scale are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? Are we going to do a pilot? And who's going to be part of that pilot, right? One of the things that this might eventually give you is student flexibility, but you don't get that with one class or two classes or five classes or probably 50 classes unless they're all in a particular program. You get that through program adoption or through entire institutional curriculum or big swaths of the curriculum adoption. That's when it really matters. And that takes time to develop. That's also a really important strategic decision that has to be made to do this. You have to be able to manage workload agreements because someone is going to do some work to prepare these courses, and the management or the facilitating of the classes themselves, especially starting out, might actually be an additional element of workload that your faculty have to reckon with. And if they have support from the institution, that's wonderful. Sometimes we don't have support from the institution. Then it's on the faculty to decide, a personal decision. How much time and effort do I have to put into this personally to make this work? So that idea of workload is really an important part. And then, of course, we need support for students and faculty. So the institution strategically has to be able to create support structures for students and for faculty who are learning how to teach differently, how to learn differently, and who have an ongoing need for some sort of support, whether it's technical support, pedagogical support, maybe some other kinds of support for students trying to make decisions about how do I participate in the mode that I really want to. There's a lot more for each of these, and you'll find some links to different readings. Some of these are from the HyFlex book and from other places, and so those are if you want to learn more about them and hear more conversation about them, at least discussion about them, maybe even monologue about them, I guess, you're welcome to look at those resources. So when an institution is deciding to do HyFlex, and this is something that you would do as an individual if it was only you making this decision, is you do something that you might think about as a feasibility analysis. Could be formal, could be informal, kind of depends on the scope of the project, but you want to make sure that, one, you validate or establish or validate the need that there is a need for different kinds of delivery in the same classes, in the same sections, in the same courses. We need to have online and we have to have face-to-face. I wrote about this in the opening to the HyFlex book. In my situation, we had a face-to-face program. We were not going to just change it into an online program overnight. So we had to continue our face-to-face program, but we also wanted to start attracting online students. How could we do that? Well, we decided that we would try this to teach our regular courses and invite online students to be part of that. So we would design the courses for online students to be part of that. And that's what really launched HyFlex for us. That's what we needed. We knew that we had that need, right? Cost benefit analysis, and that might be another part of that as well. What was it going to take to do this? And what are the possible benefits we're expecting? And then how does it balance out? Is it worth it for us? And then, or part of this whole process, I guess, as well, before you can really do a full cost benefit analysis, is, well, what do you mean by HyFlex in your situation? Are you going to try to do both online modes or just one online mode? If one online mode, is it very technology focused? Do you have that technology? Is it room location focused? Like you'll need, more recording equipment or things like that. If you're going to do that for, for your solution, do you have that available? How much flexibility will you give students? Can you afford to give students full flexibility as to what they're choosing, online or face-to-face? I think ideally HyFlex works that way, but there may be some situations where you have populations of students where you may not be able to give them full control. Maybe they have to be in the classroom for a certain percentage of the class because they can't be a fully online student because of some other parameters. So these are important things for you to take a look at. Okay, so this is all part of this idea of developing your strategy. Typically, there are these are two common strategic paths I see happening in institutions really around the world. One is kind of the way many of us have started, was the faculty just decided to do this. They saw the need with their students. They knew that they had some ability to teach online, or they figured that they could learn how to do that. Post-pandemic, we've all had some experience with that at least, but they also had skills teaching in the classroom, and probably were starting from a classroom environment. And so relatively small cost. They didn't have to buy more technology, typically, maybe extra camera, maybe some microphones or whatever. There's no faculty resistance because they're making the choice themselves. And typically, then we also have small impact. It impacts their students, and for them, those particular students, it's a huge impact, but it doesn't impact the program. It doesn't impact the students who are enrolled in the major or whatever it might be, or the certificate program, and it doesn't impact the overall enrollment for the institution. All right, so small impact, small cost, but it's a good way to start. A lot of people have started this way. Scaling is a challenge because if you're relying on individual faculty making those decisions. Another path is for an institution, or maybe it's a program or a department, or maybe it's just a degree program that says, hey, we want to serve students in this particular market. We don't also want to serve students in this market. This is a face-to-face market. This is an online market. We want to do both. We don't have the money or maybe the desire to do it in two separate programs. We want to do it together. So HyFlex courses are the way we think we can do this. Now we're talking about something that's going to have some larger scale impact, and it's going to have some larger costs. You're going to need to take the time to develop a strategy for this, to create a plan for this. You might need a compelling case for change, because you might have to ask for resources to do this. You might have to build support within your department, or if it's going across departments with multiple department chairs, maybe within a college, maybe in a whole institution, as I said earlier. You need to align the support, the technology in the room, the technology for the online component of this, faculty development. Faculty have to be prepared to do this. One of the main reasons while HyFlex pilots may fail or may not do so well is because faculty aren't prepared to do it, right? So they have to have their own opportunity for faculty development, so they have the skills they need and they can develop the confidence that they need. We also want to make sure our students are ready for this. If we can establish that there's a need for students, and we also can establish student support, we're more likely to provide or be at the point where we have student readiness. Because if students maybe prefer to be face-to-face, but they can't be, but they really want to be part of a program, there's a lot of motivation that often comes along with this. And so they're often able to learn how to learn online more so than they might have before, when it was just they were forced to take an online class because that's the only way it was offered before. Okay, now they'll be able to make that choice. And if their circumstances force them to be an only online student, and they're motivated to take that course and complete that course, and they have some support from the institution, and the faculty is willing, to work with them and develop a course that's friendly to students who are learning how to learn online. Okay, so now we can have the magic happen. All right. So an institutional approach like that would also typically have a pilot program, which would include evaluation. How well is this working? How can we tweak it to make it work even better? Let's do a second round of this, maybe a little bit larger. And so we do this in phases over time, rather than just saying one semester, we're going to be all HyFlex in this program. We need to be able to pace this over time. So we do that rollout there. And if it works there, then we find maybe some other programs that can do it just as well. So those are two common paths. As far as managing workload, sometimes institutions do have the capability to help faculty, especially at the startup phase. So typically building the course is like building an online course. And so if you have support for building an online course and teaching it the first time, then I would expect the institution, hopefully, will give you the same support for HyFlex. The second area of faculty support or workload change really is around managing and engaging learners in all modes of the course throughout the course. And this is typically not something I have found to have to see many, many additional supports for. Maybe the first term you teach a class like this, you'd get some support because it is a curricular innovation, right? And it is going to require you to learn some different things and develop different skill sets. And so that sometimes is valued, with some, some real value. Like you got time, maybe you get a course release, maybe you get additional pay or a stipend. Maybe you get some special support, TAs to help you with HyFlex, or instructional design support from faculty development staff who got some skills here and who can actually help there and be with you. Sometimes I found support by teaching 2 sections of the same course and then being able to create one large section from that. So I got credit for teaching 2 smaller sections. I taught my larger section, and we created a HyFlex so we could have space in the classroom for everyone. So there are different ways of doing this. You might have other ways of doing it on your own campus, and so those are some things you should probably ask some questions about if you're not sure. Maybe there would be support. As far as student support, we need technical support for students. You probably have some of that available already, but there might become more of that, especially if you attract students from different time zones now, because you could have students who are fully online. How do you help students who are trying to decide how they're going to participate online or in the classroom? I found that oftentimes students don't seem to have a lot of trouble making that decision. Oftentimes that decision is almost made for them. I'm already here on class in the building. I have a class before this. I have a class after this. I'm going to be in the classroom. It's just easier for me, and I want it that way. I get it done, right? So a lot of students, some students at least, who show up face to face, are doing it because it's the most convenient for them. A lot of students who show up online they're doing that because they can't be in person. They don't have the transportation. They may be too far away, or they may have other like family care conflicts where they can't be gone during that period of time. So that decision is kind of forced upon them by their circumstances. It's some students, of course, do have to make that decision because they could do it either way. So what's better for them? So think about how you would talk them through that process and develop a little tool, perhaps maybe just a series of questions. How would you like to learn? Do you like to learn with people around you? Do you like to learn in a very dynamic in kind of social way? Well, then the classroom is probably the place for you. Would you rather learn more on your own? You're not totally on your own. We're still going to do some interaction with others, but at your own pace. You don't have to talk to others while you're actually doing most of that learning, at least, and you're going to interact a lot through text. Well, maybe an online path is better for you. So some tools like that could be helpful for you. Like I said earlier, sometimes you want to restrict flexibility, or you might need to, for perhaps international students or students who don't experience online learning success. Maybe they have a record of not doing well in online courses. Maybe for them, they're restricted to the classroom path, at least until they develop some skills in the online path. And maybe they demonstrate those skills through periodic opportunities to do online weeks in a HyFlex course. That's another way you might approach something like that. Seat availability is another one. Sometimes we'll have a class that's 40 students, and there's the only classroom we have available for is the seats 25. Well, rather than restrict the class to 25 students, we'll leave it at 40, put it in a 25 seat classroom, and let students know there's only 25 seats here. So if you want to be in person, you got to reserve a seat. And so a seat reservation system might be something you would do. That would be another element of student support to consider. As far as faculty support, they need to be able to teach online. We assume they know how to teach effectively in the classroom, right? Don't we? Well, you'll find that you'll probably be changing a little bit of the way you teach in the classroom if you do HyFlex. You're going to probably create it more engaging, more interactive, and more just different. It's going to feel a little bit different. Not worse, but different. Because now you'll also have online students, and you'll be knowing the face-to-face students in front of you next week may be online, and some of those online students may be in front of you the next week. And so that's going to change your experience as well. So that's something that faculty kind of like to talk through once they start experiencing it. So a community of kind of a community of practice, or a learning community for faculty around HyFlex could be a really wonderful way of getting faculty support. Instructional design assistants, of course, other kinds of support. So things will change. The only thing guaranteed is that things will definitely change. And so anything you would think that you would need from your institution to support you, those are the things you should be asking for. And maybe they exist already, or maybe they can be developed. So some of the things we find that, as far as faculty go with perspectives, before the pandemic, we didn't have a whole lot of faculty using the LMS who weren't already teaching online. I mean, they were using the LMS, but they weren't doing much with it. Most of them, I think 30% of our courses were using it for anything other than just posting files. Most faculty just use it for files. Post-COVID, now many more faculties are using online discussions. Many more faculty are using Zoom sessions, even in live classrooms. They might have students who say, I can't be there tomorrow. Can I Zoom in? And so if we all have the Zoom tool available at our institution. So faculty will sometimes say, sure, you just Zoom in and we'll just create one for you. They're sort of doing HyFlex, but not designing for it. So it's not, lazy HyFlex isn't the right term. Lazy has a negative connotation, but it's like a non-designed HyFlex. And so it could be a lot better. Let's just say it that way. So some of the concerns, of course, workload, boundaries around time, workflow. When am I going to do all this? I'm thinking schedule, and then respect your schedule as much as you can. Other concerns, I don't see my students' faces every week. I don't like that, right? I'd rather see them in front of every week. Yeah, that's true. Are there ways you can see their faces even if they're working online? Synchronously, we have tools that allow people to use their cameras. Do you require that? Do you encourage that? Do you give them a reason to do that? How about asynchronous students? Are there ways that you can help them reveal themselves, their pictures, the videos? Maybe they do a 30-second video post every other week or something like that, or maybe you do for them as well. Interaction in class activities, security, privacy, plagiarism, all these challenges we have with online courses and all the challenges we have with face-to-face courses, they all come into HyFlex. And so the strategies that you put in place to meet those in your traditional single mode courses are likely to work. Hopefully they'll work also in your HyFlex course. So there are all these challenges. Of course, intellectual property rights is another concern. Sometimes our faculty don't want to risk losing their intellectual property just because they happen to be sharing it with students. We did some surveys around using, teaching in hybrid modes, HyFlex modes, online modes, especially when we were rolling out lecture capture. Now, this was a while ago, but these are some of the things that faculty were telling us. They perceived that interactivity and therefore learning were reduced in the online or in the online parts of a hybrid course or an online course. And that can certainly happen. But that depends a lot on the course design and the faculty facilitation for students. You can design a very active, very engaged, very demanding online course, just like you can design it for the classroom. And so I think that it's an honest perception, because it really happens a lot, especially when faculty start teaching online and they're not prepared for it, or they don't have the resources for it, or they don't know how to do it. And students don't know how to learn that way, and students don't have a choice to choose to be online if they're in a particular program that has a course that's only available online. Those are some of the things where we get into trouble with this. So there is this perception, and I think we can design that one pretty much not away, but we can do a lot with our design and our facilitation strategies to help to keep that from being a real problem for us in HyFlex. Here's another perception. Online teaching with lecture capture puts intellectual property and jobs at risk. Yeah, well, it probably doesn't put jobs at risk, I would think, unless you can be replaced by a lecture capture, like a video playing. And if you could be replaced like that, you probably would be replaced like that. There's a lot of great videos out there about your content that you're not doing, that someone else is doing that might be even better than yours. Mine included. But the value I add in my class is I facilitate with students. I interact with students no matter what mode they're in. I mentor those students to the extent they want to be mentored. I interact with them. I advise them, all those kinds of things. I help them through the learning process, and that's what our faculty role is. And that's not going to be replaced by a lecture capture, of course. Intellectual property, we protect that by policy, and we have to trust the policy. And so we don't reuse lecture captures unless we have specific permission to do so. Let's see, another perception: teaching online, using online technology adds to workload. Faculty don't see an advantage to them. Yeah, there is a cost using the online technology. You might have a few more clicks, but it might be more than that. There might be more to it. So you have to understand why this is being done and believe in the value of it. Even lecture capture in a face-to-face course, students find that very valuable to help them learn. Even students who are there every day in your class, they still want to see those lectures so they can review them later. I think that's a compliment to a faculty member to have students ask for recordings of the lectures so they can review them later. And, so hopefully this is something that we can overcome as well. So where are faculty starting? Where maybe are you starting? You know, if you've got classroom skills, um, you know, if you're helping other faculty, right, and the other faculty come to you and they want to teach a HyFlex course and they say, yeah, I've got the classroom done. I've been teaching this class for 5 years. It might be something you want to verify, or actually it's an opportunity to open up that design because you're going to open up the design for the new modes of the class. So you might be thinking also, maybe there's an opportunity to improve what's going on in the classroom. So getting some baseline information about what's actually happening now. You might find it's not very active, not very engaged at all, and the students may not be very motivated. They may actually not be very participative, and so they may be not learning very much. But that could change. You can change. You can design that differently and facilitate it differently. How about teaching online? Where are you with teaching online? Have you taught synchronous or asynchronous? Do you have the technologies you need? Are you comfortable using them? Are you happy using them? Right? I think we have to be able to teach with a smile as much as we can, even if in the back of my mind saying, "Oh, I hate these Zoom boxes again. Oh, I just despise this." But for my students, if they hear that from me and they see that in my demeanor, what are they going to walk away with? Dr. Beatty, he doesn't want to be here. Why should I be here? I don't want to be here either. So it's really important, I think, for us to be able to, project this positive attitude because that will help us, I think, actually develop that positive attitude. I do like my Zoom students, working with them. I know it's always a challenge for me because they'll have their cameras off. So what I'll do is I'll find ways to encourage them to put their cameras on, put them in small groups. Their cameras come on. They come back to the large group. Most of the cameras stay on. Why? Because we're interacting in different ways. How about teaching hybrid and the mix of different things? These are other things that will be helpful. If you know where you are with that, what your skill sets are, or your faculty, if you're in a faculty support role, that's going to be really helpful for you. And where do you want to go? This is where the strategy also is important. Where are we going to start? Are we going to take our classroom experience and try to turn it into an online experience? That can work. It might have to be adapted. Well, it probably will have to be adapted, but that could be one of the strategic approaches is take the quality and the excellence in the classroom and move it into the online space and then create a space where we have both. And we give students a chance to choose between the classroom and the face and the online, on a regular basis, hopefully every week. We have an online course and I have a face-to-face course and I've taught both. We're going to combine them in a way. Okay, we might be doing that, but we're probably going to have to find to combine them. There's going to have to be there's some interface here and there's going to be some compromise because I might have like a 3-week experience online, 3-week experience in the classroom. And if I give students flexibility, week 1, they may be in the classroom. Next week, they might be online. Next week, they might still be online. They might be back in the classroom. So some of those things I'm really proud of in those single mode classes, I might have to adapt to allow for flexibility, right? How about faculty who aren't willing or aren't ready for HyFlex all at once? Probably many aren't. Maybe the chance to do this in the first term of this experiment for them, this pilot for them, is to try a few sessions, HyFlex, even one. Would students even take advantage of the online opportunity? And could they actually learn in the online space? If you're not sure about that, then you might just try that out. Week 6 of your syllabus, make this an option where you can do it online or you can do it face-to-face. Explain to students what you're doing and why, and see how it goes. When I started, I had one class. I think I took 2 sessions in one semester and turned them into HyFlex, and it was just asynchronous online or face-to-face. That worked well enough. Wasn't great, but it worked well enough. So the next semester, I'm going to design the whole course for HyFlex. And that worked well enough that the next semester, so the 3rd semester in now, okay, I was teaching 3 or 4 classes, I don't remember. But then they were all HyFlex, and I decided that I wasn't going to turn back. I found enough students who were giving me an affirmation of, yeah, I really need this support. I need this flexibility. Thank you for doing this. And so that was the way I did it. Once again, kind of starting on my own with the permission of my department and the knowledge of my dean. I don't know if they really understood what I was going to do. And actually, when I started, I probably didn't understand it as well myself either. But over 3 terms, we developed to the point where I was doing it, and then we started working with the other faculty in our program to do it. So when we talk about the kinds of support that faculty need to move into this, I mean, clearly, understanding basically what it is we're talking about. I don't know how important this is anymore. I do think that there's still a lot of faculty who don't know what this is really. part because they haven't done it, but also people will talk about HyFlex differently in different situations, and they're not always using the same language or the same definitions, I should say. So once again, when I talk about HyFlex and the HyFlex that we're going to use in this workshop, face-to-face and online. Online could be synchronous or asynchronous. It might be flipping back and forth. It could be always both on, but it's got to be online, on ground, and online. Got to keep this right here. And giving student flexibility. Oftentimes, a simple little webinar can help them. This is why I asked you to watch that at the beginning of this workshop experience. And so if that might give them at least a general sense of, does this seem like it might help with my students? Do I think I could do this? Do I think my institution would be a place where I could do this and I'd get the support I need to do this? Or do I want to join that pilot maybe that's being advertised? So that could be a good price, but then they do need to have, you need and faculty need to have more of a supportive opportunity. So a workshop could be part of that, but really, in your own context, if you can get some one-on-one instructional design consultation and support, that would really be helpful. You can get some of that through the facilitation and the discussions and the practice activities that you do in this workshop. But if you can get this in with your own team, or if you're one of these team members and you're here to learn more about it, this is the kind of support your faculty need. They need to be able to talk to someone. I tried this, it didn't work. I tried this, it worked great. Now, how do I do this in all of my classes or all of my sections? Just like that. The kinds of things that the faculty might ask you that you perhaps some of those things you might anticipate, others might be brand new to you. So the kind of support kind of matters. So when you're thinking about the challenges and the opportunities and coming up with some strategic thoughts about this, there is a worksheet there available for you in module 1. And this is designed for you to use as a help. It was really designed for people to talk about around a table or within like a department setting. But if you want to fill this out, you're welcome to, and you can post it to the discussion forum and I will give you feedback on it. And there may be some other people, if there's other people working in the workshop who could give you feedback as well. But you don't necessarily need to use this little Word document kind of framework. But these are important questions to think about. What are the opportunities? What are the challenges that you might be able to overcome if you could do this? What are where are the pain points? Especially if you know that there are students who want to be in your classes and yet they've got challenges in their lives that prevent them from being there, or they actually happen to be 100 miles away, or they move around for work all the time and they can't be in a particular place on a regular time and basis for a whole semester. It just isn't possible for them. That could be a pain point that maybe HyFlex could help solve. What about the costs? Do you have the technologies in place, or are they easily accessible? Do you have the skills you need yourselves? Do you think your students would have the skills? Do you think you have the administrative support for something like this? Is there already a working definition of this in your institution, or maybe in your system if you're part of a larger system? So those are some of the things that it would be helpful, I think, for you to work through. One other thing to keep in mind is that when we're in this, we are all in some place in this adoption life cycle around HyFlex, and so are your administrators, and so are your colleagues. Students, maybe not so much. For students, they could still be a face-to-face student if they didn't like HyFlex. They could still be an online student in a HyFlex class if they didn't like the idea of flipping back and forth. No one's forcing them to make that choice. But it's really the faculty, the staff, and the administration that are going to be somewhere along this. Some will be visionaries looking for opportunities. They're going to be very excited about helping you do this. Others will be more pragmatic. Could you show me another math faculty that's done this and hasn't helped them? Or, what's your department think about this? If they go along with it, we'll go along with it. We'll give you the resources that you need. Or maybe they're more on the conservative side. Oh, wait a minute, we've been doing what we've been doing for a long time. And yeah, we're having some trouble right now. Enrollments are down, budgets are down too. But I don't know if this is the right solution for us yet. All right. So sometimes you'll have some challenges around communicating in those areas, or maybe sometimes you'll have colleagues in particular who are skeptics. Yeah, fine, you do that. I'm not going to do that. I'll retire before I have to teach that way. Okay, so where are you in this process? And then when you're talking with your colleagues, where are they? That's helpful to understand that they'll be at different places, and you'll probably talk to them differently depending upon where they are. Hopefully by now you've got some idea on what you're going to do for strategy, what your strategy might be. What I encourage you now is to take a look at the resources and the links from this that are in this presentation and in the file that's there posted into the workshop, as well as take a look at the other additional resources and then participate in the online discussion. Thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been helpful for you.